this idea that there was this red wave in 2022. I'm like, people were still locked down or just getting out. Like in LA, we were just getting out of lockdowns.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
That's crazy.
We were locked down until like late 2021.
Don't you know there were no lockdowns?
That's
what the apologists will tell you. Because they didn't solder you into your home. It doesn't count. Yeah.
Did they actually say that?
No, people actually will still say that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There are people who the ones that really kill me are the school building truthers where they're like, schools weren't closed.
That's crazy.
Like my friend.
School building truthers.
we were there. I lived through it.
We were on curfew in a lockdown in 2020 in LA. So because of the riots, we got a curfew put on us while we were locked down. And we were only allowed to like go walk our dogs technically.
Ugh.
Yeah.
This is a thing that I think
then it was like, then you had to be home by 5.
I'm still not even angry enough about it. After all, like I was angry at the time, but it was all sort of disorienting. So I wasn't angry enough about it because I was like trying to homeschool my kids.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, like I think I was ahead of people in being really angry about it in 2021, 2022. That's why in Virginia, a Republican governor won in 2021. And then in 2022, I was like, aren't y'all mad?
Yeah.
But it took a little longer for people to process
because they were all trying to survive.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I'm like, I had to wear a mask in mid 2022 when I was having my child.
Oh my gosh.
Still.
When you were like literally having the baby?
Yeah. Well, I had a C-section, but still.
Oh, that's okay.
But still. Like
they shouldn't do that to you.
No. And so even the first like pictures of her seeing me, I get like emotional about it. It's like me in a mask.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you guys? You can't tell me that this shit was not completely insane.
It was insane.
Yeah.
And
and this is how you got RFK Jr., by the way.
I know. And then the self-righteousness and the gaslighting combined, I just can't handle because they'll be like, I don't know, we are the freedom people. And I'm like, are you? Because I couldn't have a barbecue in 2021. So are you the freedom? Like I couldn't go to church.
We couldn't have
that
AA
wasn't
meetings.
allowed.
We couldn't have AA meetings.
That is so tragic to me.
Yeah.
What an awful thing it is going to go down in history, I think. Well, if I'm in charge of the history, and I think I am, it's going to go down as one of the worst policy mistakes ever made.
And they kept on doubling down on it, even after they knew. I still I've talked about this so much, but I still think about the little shoes. I'm like, why haven't we gotten rid of these? Like, you're still reminding people all the time what absolute insanity and bullshit, because they've come out and been like, oh, that was just a made up number.
Yeah, no, we didn't have a theory for that.
We were talking
Science.
about science. Yeah.
The admissions are wild.
Yeah.
From Fauci and Collins saying we didn't really have any backing for 6 feet. Birx is like, nah, it was never 15 days to flatten the curve. We were just buying some time so we could do the rest of the restrictions. Like, don't say that.
Do you remember during like in the comedy clubs how insane it was? We were talking. Eleanor Kerrigan was in town this past weekend, and we were talking about that time being wild. And I interviewed a lot of the like road dog comics from New York, like Sam Morrill and Mark Normand and all these guys, because they were losing their minds. And Sam was having shows on literal rooftops. I'm like, we were joking about how it's a miracle like more comedians didn't jump off these rooftop shows. But then we were talking about, like, Eleanor was like, we were doing comedy through the window at the Comedy Store to, like, the patio. So everybody was on the patio. But in the Comedy Cellar, they had plexiglass. Like, it was so weird, like a little plexiglass box that you were buying. What was it? Was Creek still?
I was in Orange County at the
So
time.
they were open. But they were pretty open down there.
The Creek, that's when it started getting rough for Rebecca.
Yeah, that's
because they couldn't, because they had a restaurant too.
Yeah,
so they couldn't open the restaurant either.
Ugh.
So that's when she came here, right?
Hurt. Yeah,
and not just by the virus, guys.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, even my old neighborhood when we went home for New Year's, there were so many restaurants that got shut down, and I thought maybe, okay, it's been a few years, and it has not recovered. And in fact, it's just gotten worse. Like the
Yeah.
whole area is deteriorated. It's all just empty commercial buildings, which is the worst, and just homeless. And so wait, when did Rebecca come here?
After that, so 22,
2021, 22, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you hear the stories of like, remember those shows they were doing outside in cars?
Oh yeah.
And people were like beeping their horn. I mean,
I remember I went to see
crazy.
I went to see a Robert Earl Keen show in the DC area, and I believe it was in 2020 because he's a Texas guy, so he was touring like a normal person because he had been living in Texas.
Yeah.
And I don't know who in Northern Virginia let someone have a concert, but he had this concert in an indoor venue, and I went, and I remember feeling like, ooh, this
Like
is
prohibition.
Like, look at us. We're in a speakeasy.
Yeah, exactly.
Just wantonly listening to
Just
music.
raw dogging air or whatever they call it.
So you were raw dogging the air. We even had beers. It was crazy.
That was the weird thing. So we drove here in 2020 from, I think it was 2020 or maybe 2021, from LA to do, we were house hunting, stopped at my husband at the time, my in-laws on the way, and came to do Rogan. And it was like we had been in LA nonstop, and then we drove through Arizona, and Arizona opened up like I think 2 weeks after. It was like they did their 2 weeks, and then a lot of red states were like, we're done.
Yeah.
And we were at this bar. I met my friend there, and they were doing, it was, if you came from a blue state where it was like, where we would have people, I mean, I tell this story all the time of Maggie and I going on a walk, and this old man, probably kitty corner from like a block away from, like we were crossing the corridor. He's kitty corner away from us while we were crossing the street on the other side.
Right.
And he's like, no masks, no mask. I'm like, you are going to die of a heart attack before you die of COVID, sir, from us walking across the street. But that level of insanity to Arizona.
Mhm.
And they're playing, with the like, what's that, cornhole?
Yeah.
The kids are all running around. And then we came to Texas, and it was same thing. It was just open. And I was like, oh, we don't have to live like this. And I would go back, and this was, it was still like that for like a year plus after.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm like, people aren't living like this anymore, right? It was wild. It really was that idea. I think Scott Adams talks about it a lot, and anyone in media is like, there are two Americas. If you were an independent media at a certain point, it was bizarre seeing how every single thing was perceived.
Yeah.
I do actually feel like now it's more, there's the mainstream stuff, which you can know how things will be perceived. But with this, independent media did rise in 2021 and beyond. And now you're kind of like, I don't really know where everybody stands all the time, which I actually think is a good thing.
No, I think that is good. And I think a lot of mainstream sort of legacy media just was so all in on the COVID restrictions and on the censorship and on the heavy-handed bullying of everyone. And it turned out they were wrong.
Yeah.
And that they were often lying. And I think they just put so much money on that movement as like, this is, I don't know. I'm sure some people thought they were actually saving lives for a bit there, but we had real information that wasn't the case after a while, that there were better ways to do this. And I just think it was a huge betrayal that they're not coming back from.
Not for a long time. Yeah, not for a long time.
You'd also have to like earn it back. Like you have to change your behavior to get people to come back on board.
Yeah.